Hey everybody, I'm Kelsey and this is Cassidy and Katie. And thanks so much for coming to our YouTube channel where we talk about the course Write Your Way to Freedom. A lot of people have a lot of questions and we have three different unique answers from three people who have actually taken the course. So we hope that you find this information helpful. Feel free to browse all of our questions in the notes below. And if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them and we'll try and get to them in one of our next recordings. Thanks so much for tuning in today. One of the questions that we get asked a lot is, how did COVID impact your business? Did work slow down? And we just want to make a special note real fast. We'll have a separate one about recessions just because we felt like we've seen some kind of different impacts in our businesses, and we can probably speak to more than one recession at this point because that's a millennial's life. But I actually wasn't a copywriter yet when COVID happened. So I can't speak to this at all. So I'm going to let Katie and Cassidy take the lead.
All right, I'll start us out. So I started copywriting full time, got my first client in March 2019. So I had like almost a full year of copywriting under my belt before the pandemic happened. And I remember when it hit, of course, a lot of the questions that I started getting from people who were thinking about buying Write Your Way to Freedom was like, how's COVID impacted your business? Like, are you still working? Do you still have clients? And the truth is, I actually got busier when COVID hit because now all of my clients, I'm in the finance space for reference, but all of my clients suddenly needed all of this information for their audiences. Like even with my banking clients, a lot of banks like shut down. They were no longer seeing people in person, or they were like waiving withdrawal fees for savings accounts so people could access their money when they needed to. Regulation D was paused. Like all of these things are happening in the finance industry as a direct result. The Fed was slashing rates to 0%. Like all of these things are happening, and all of my clients just needed tons of information for people on all of those things. So for me, work definitely sped up when COVID hit. And then I would say I don't know, maybe it stayed revved up or it like tapered out to a nice cushy normal. But yeah, things definitely but things definitely didn't dip for me. Now, I do know people who are like writing in the travel niche, for example, and that kind of did come to a halt and they had to rethink things. So it may be like a niche dependent experience, but in my niche at least, like it only got busier.
Can I just ask some follow-up questions that I think people will have?
Yeah.
So you said that it like sped up financially. Like, what did it, if you don't have these exact numbers, I think it's fine. But do you happen to know, like month to month, like pre-COVID, I was making an average of this per month. And then post-COVID, I was able to do this. That's my first question.
Are we post-COVID? That's my first question.
Well, that's true. I mean, like after like COVID had already like become a part of our daily norm.
Yeah. Let me actually look at my numbers. Hmm. That's an interesting question because if I look back at my numbers, I don't see like a monetary increase, but I definitely felt busier. But I think too, like, because my copywriting business was only a year old, I was still in the process of sticking with a client for a little while and then moving on to something better. I look back at my 2020 income, for example, and like it was pretty stable. Like month to month, I was making anywhere from 7 to 9K a month. But yeah, I was still in the process of like getting better clients. And with each of those better clients, like the main thing all of them needed was COVID specific or COVID related content.
The next question is, would you say that it felt like you got busier because were you getting more inbound leads? Were there less like outbound leads? Were there more job opportunities? Like what did the landscape look like for acquiring clients? Did that change?
Yeah, this was definitely a season where like pretty much all of my leads came via word of mouth. Like people were either finding me through my website or they were finding me on LinkedIn and they were desperate for writers. Like from what I remember, especially in 2020, even the current clients that I had were actively looking for more writers because they just needed so much more info. I do remember being in a state of like my clients needing more writers, me having more opportunities to write for bigger brands because they needed more writers. Yeah.
And then my next question is, as like these leads are coming in and you're potentially like getting busier, like how did you manage the workload, or what did the shift look like to accommodate that just like overnight change that we all experienced?
Oh yeah, 2020, I would label my year of burnout. That was the year that was honestly the year where I was this close to taking a full-time copywriting job with one of my clients for like a 15K a year pay cut from what I was making at the time, just because the thought of only having to write for one person sounded so much better than having to write for like the 8 people that I had at the time because I felt so stretched thin. And just to give some backstory on that, I slowly realized that like I should raise my rates and so I can like make the same amount of money by working less with fewer clients. And that was ultimately my strategy for 2021. It's kind of funny. You can like look back on your years as you copyright to be like, this is like the overarching theme of this year. And 2020 for me was 100% the year of burnout.
Yeah. And just to emphasize there, Cassidy slipped this in real sly, but if you're feeling super burnt out and like you have too many clients and it's too much, it's probably time to raise your rates. So just make a little, put that on a sticky note somewhere before you start the course, put it above your laptop, something like that. And yeah, make sure you don't
Okay.
forget that.
I have a sticky note still in my desk drawer. I'm pretty sure I created this in 2020 because I had just taken on like a one-time project. I knew I would never work with this client ever again. One-time project. I pitched in $300. The project ended up taking like at least 15 hours. So I wrote this sticky note that says, nothing under $400 ever. Do not do it.
Okay.
Because I was so frustrated at myself for charging such a low rate.
Also too, just to level set some things, if you have never seen any of our other videos, Cassidy's first client paid her $45 a blog post. So this is a big transformation over multiple years. I love that you still have that sticky note. Don't do it.
Never.
Past Cassidy was not going to let future Cassidy do that ever again.
No, and now it would probably be like $500. And if they're a recurring client, no
Yeah.
repeat business, I don't know, 1,000.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. That's so true. I loved hearing your like before and after kind of, and I think that is kind of funny in times where business, when we're like growing in one way, but it doesn't necessarily reflect on the books yet, because maybe you're, you know what I mean? Maybe you're paring down your clients, but you're charging more per project. I think that's always so fascinating to look back at. My experience with COVID was a little different than yours because I actually officially started looking for clients mid-January of 2020. And so I was just new, like baby business. I didn't have much to compare it to, but I do remember as soon as like school shut down, that like mid-March, just like, oh my God, this is a thing. I literally turned to my husband and was like, well, that was fun. Like, I was like, I had 6 weeks of trying to build a business and now I'm done. I'm back to stay at home mom. And I guess, because this is obviously not going to work. My kids are home, like whatever. But I accidentally got really busy too. Like I had a one client I was working on a project with, and then clients started coming to me. I put that like early COVID energy into writing blogs for my own website because I wanted to continue to carve out a couple hours a day that were just mine for my business. I didn't want to fall back into like, now I'm just like staying at home again. I'm not working anymore. I knew it was really important for me to like, even if I don't have a paying client, I still need to put a couple hours a day aside for my business. So I started blogging, and that like really helped my own website's SEO. And so I started getting inbound traffic from that. And I think what so many people in so many industries realized with the pandemic and everything shifting so drastically was the importance of that digital presence, the importance of having an online storefront, a website, a shopping experience, or depending on your business, that is as impressive, if not more than your in-person one, because in-person was no longer an option. And so even if you had this really amazing customer experience in person, face to face, or in a brick and mortar building, and you couldn't offer that, your choices were to level up your online experience or to fail, honestly, probably for most businesses. And so that was just a reality for a lot of people, of realizing like having a really crappy website that no one went to just wasn't an option anymore. So there was just, so people were willing to invest in that. And then on top of that, I write for the interiors niche, and with everyone, who previously had the disposable income maybe to invest in this, but instead was using that money toward travel, or using that money toward, like all their kids' different like traveling sports teams or these other things, like now suddenly had so much time at home in these spaces that they had neglected, hadn't really thought about, or just like put up with because they were always running to and from soccer practice, running to and from work. They weren't home. And suddenly you're in these spaces that you just don't love. I think our culture as a whole shifted so much to really like reappreciate what our homes are and what they can be, and how much of an investment, not just in our own physical structures, but in our like selves that is. And so the interiors industry had such a boom. And so, yeah, it just took off. I brought on a junior writer to help me with my workload at the end of 2020 because I was so busy, which is something I hadn't anticipated at all, but it ended up being great for my business. And I love that you mentioned travel. I do remember that was the one niche, Cassidy, that I remember in the group, people being like, shit, like they had to like recalibrate a lot of those things. I'm sure there were a few others, but I would say by and large, I think most people got busier.
Yeah, I feel like the restaurant niche was also probably another one that was like, what do we do now? My question's for you, Katie. So you said that you started blogging to like help improve your own SEO, and that helped you get inbound leads. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what you were like blogging about that you think helped with that traffic? And then if you know, like, a couple of like leads came from like this specific keyword or anything like that, if you want to share any of what you learned behind that experience, I think that might be helpful for some folks.
I love that. At first, I mean, I was just trying to rank for interior design copywriter was my main goal. So I wrote a couple blogs about like, what does it look like to work with an interior design copywriter? How can an interior design copywriter help your interior design business? Questions like that I think people maybe were typing in if they knew what a copywriter was. And then I started writing, you think about what would people need if they didn't know what a copywriter was? So what questions are they asking then? Like, does my interior design business really need a blog? Can a blog really make my interior design business more profitable? These types of things. One that I wrote, honestly, it's still probably one of my highest traffic blogs, was turning this idea of how do we show up and provide customer service in the era of quarantine. And so it was this blog that was like about business, but not really about business. And literally the end of it has a recipe in it for like my favorite thing to cook for people. Cause it was just like, how do you take care of your people? I just think we think of business as like, this is how I serve my customers. It looks like this. It's a black and white thing. And like, I think in the pandemic, what we realized is like, we are just these really fully messy humans, and we interact with each other as messy humans in our living room on Zoom with our kids interrupting and like Legos underfoot. And you know what I mean? Like you couldn't separate work and life anymore. And so I think that was an important conversation to have, and it resonated with a lot of people. But yeah, so that blogging definitely took off. And I think one thing too that was an important conversation, like you mentioned restaurants, Kelsey. And I think what the pandemic really showed too was like the importance of email marketing, the importance of being able to get a hold of your people. Like for these restaurants who did find a way to pivot, there's one here that's like a barbecue joint. And so what they started doing to pivot for their own business was like having family style dinners where it was like dinner for 4, dinner for 6, dinner for 8, and you'd go and reserve it that night. And then it was just like pickup was from 5 to 6, and you'd drive through and you'd pick up your like dinner for 4, dinner for 6. And it was such a brilliant way for this restaurant to stay afloat, to feed people. But the problem is if you don't have an email list, how do people know this is what you're doing? You know what I mean? Like you can have all the best ideas ever, but if you don't have a way to get that information out. And so I think even in the restaurant business, even in some of these industries that had to shift so much, like that became so important to have a copywriter who could write those emails for you, who could help you demystify this world of email marketing. Just like this new generation of people were having to think of businesses so differently. And so I think copywriters and marketing experts, digital marketing experts were really like such important partners for businesses in this era. And it was really, I don't know about you guys, but I thought it was just really cool to be a part of that. You're not just writing content, you're literally helping someone figure out how to keep their business afloat during a time that's horrible. It was really humbling and really, really cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, one of my clients was a digital marketing agency for financial advisors. And I feel like financial advisors are traditionally a little slower to adopt new technology. And there were kind of two sides of her business going on. So one side was her trying to educate her clients on like how to move into the digital world, like how to reach out to your clients via email, how to have video calls, like the importance of, like you said, having this really strong website when you can't just woo someone over face to face over like a coffee or something. But then on the other side of that was actually like ghostwriting for those clients and creating the content that they needed to then communicate to their clients. So I got like a small taste of that. And you're right, it's really cool.
Thanks so much for tuning into our video today. I'm Kelsey, and this is Katie and Cassidy. And together we talk about what it's like to be in the program Write Your Way to Freedom to help you determine if it's the right fit for you or not. If anything from the videos today resonated with you or made you decide like, yes, this is it, I want to sign up, it would mean the world to us if you used our referral code. For full transparency, we do get a little bit of a monetary kickback every time somebody signs up that we split between the three of us. And we also make a $100 donation to World Central Kitchen, which you can find out more information on via the link in our notes. So thanks so much for tuning in and check out the rest of our questions. We've probably answered the one that you have. Bye.